Hello everyone! I wanted to resurrect a concept for a video that I used to do a few years ago that I stopped doing, which was a predictions video for I think will happen in music in the upcoming year. So I wanted to sit down and share the albums that I really hope or I predict and sort of course, also rant off my wish list of albums that I would love to see released in 2024. And so it also is a way for me to sort of summarize my feelings on where the music industry is at the moment, because I've been wanting to kind of dive into that a little bit. We've seen in 2023 quite a few, I would say momentous and big album releases. Taylor Swift has had a phenomenal year. I think she is just reaching heights that is kind of stratospheric, and for someone who just sells music predominantly is just absolutely in this day and age quite unprecedented, and sells tickets for shows. But I would argue that outside of Taylor Swift and perhaps of course let's not forget Beyonce also had a huge big grossing high grossing tour as well this year. I feel, and I cover predominantly female artists, and it's mostly in the pop sphere, if you're new here. And so that's going to be the angle that I'm sort of looking at the music industry through. But I do feel like especially the latter half of this year, well, I'll just say this. We had some serious Hollywood strikes that, unless you live under a rock, you probably were aware of. We had the Writers Guild of America go on strike. And that lasted for about 6 months, about 5 months or so. And then we had the SAG-AFTRA strike, the Screen Actors Guild, which was just a smidge shorter. That was like 4 months or so, but still very long. And they did overlap for several months. But I would argue that a lot of female artists, particularly in the pop and in the pop sphere, let's just put it this way, have also apparently felt like they have been on strike without, of course, publicly saying so. I feel that particularly this fall, 2023 was pretty disappointing. Usually in the fall, we see quite a lot of releases. It's the holiday season, and a lot of record labels still kind of push that as the time to put out new music. We see more music come out, sometimes the, early spring and summer period is big, but there seems to be always a reliably, strong showing of albums released by major labels and big artists every, October, September, and November. And this year, that wasn't exactly the case. Of course, we did have Taylor Swift. We had a few others. We had Olivia Rodrigo. But it was by and large, especially for women, not a really big fall. We definitely had the men show up. We had Drake. We had Bad Bunny. We had another Ed Sheeran album. He put out one in the spring, and he put out another one in the a follow-up in the fall. Chris Brown. I mean, men typically release music at much faster levels than a lot of women I seem to see in the music industry, just on average these days. But we definitely saw a lot of men put out music this fall, but women not so much. And especially in the pop genre. And so that was kind of a really, I felt like I was the only one really noticing it, but it was kind of a really upsetting realization. Besides, Cher putting out a Christmas album, there wasn't really a big pop female artist being spotlighted besides Taylor Swift. And of course, as I am sitting down here filming this in about 24 hours, Nicki Minaj is supposed to finally be releasing the studio album Pink Friday 2. We can safely say that it is definitely happening. And probably by the time you see this video, the album will already be out. And I will probably review that record. So that is one big album left for 2023 that I am very excited about. But it was an album that we really weren't sure was actually going to come this year. I mean, up until this week, there was still a lot of doubt, and I think a lot of barbs and fans of Nicki Minaj's heads that this album was going to get pushed because it had been pushed back several times already. I mean, the album was originally supposed to come out in October. Then it seemed a lot more solidified to be coming out on November 17th. And then a few weeks before that, she pushed it to December 8th. And even then, it was still up in the air about whether this was really going to start rolling. And we never got an album pre-order, so it didn't, especially on streaming. So it still was a little bit worrisome, is this really happening? But, you know, the album is coming on December 8th, and I'm very excited to listen to it and share my thoughts. So thankfully, Nicki Minaj is saving the fall somewhat. Interestingly, she's also releasing alongside, she's not necessarily a brand new artist, but she is new to me and I think a lot of pop music fans, Tate McRae, who is, you know, I would consider her a TikTok girl, but that may not be entirely fair. You know, she is an up-and-coming pop savant in her own right that I'm only just beginning to get familiar with, but I'm not nearly as excited about that. In fact, not really checking for Tate McRae right now at the moment. So, as a matter of fact, I feel like maybe it's a bit unfair, but Tate McRae is maybe a little too indicative of where I feel Gen Z is not cultivating and creating, and maybe this is more the fault of record labels than musicians. Pop stars are not the same as they once were. I feel that way very strongly about Ice Spice. I have some hot takes there, though I don't know if they're that so hot. I just feel the TikTok artists are not bringing it. It's just not the same. I'm sorry. And I know, you know, grandpa, get off my lawn energy, but it's true. And that's been really disheartening because if there's not, you know, the old guard of new, you know, of artists releasing music, well then of course we're making way for younger artists, newer artists to come on the scene. And we are seeing that. But at this point, you know, Billie Eilish, a lot of these artists like Olivia Rodrigo are not even that new. They've already on their sophomore album. It's not like we're seeing a lot of big artists blow up like we used to in the same way. I think streaming has really broken the system a little bit. And it's benefiting artists like Taylor Swift and, you know, TikTok geared artists. But it's sort of the artists who go at it the old kind of musical theater way, or should I say, the School of Performing Arts kind of methodology into breaking into the music industry. The Lady Gaga methodology of moving into the music industry. You're just not really seeing that anymore. They're not breaking through, and it's getting really difficult for these big pop star moments to happen. And when they do happen, it feels very forced, like this artist is being unpreparedly thrust into the spotlight with not the same level of drive or preparation or vision. And, you know, I feel for some of these artists because maybe this is not exactly what they bargained for. And I don't know. It's an interesting conversation to have around where the music industry is today with up-and-coming talent and the so-called, you know, democratization of music. But it really feels like we are at a level of hiatus that we haven't seen before. All the pop girlies are on hiatus right now. Maybe some of them are about to come out of it, but it's still very speculative. And that's, of course, most of what this whole video is going to be. A lot of these artists, you know, we have inklings or rumors about them being in the studio and coming back with a big comeback. But it's not a guarantee. It's not a surefire thing, except for a few. And so I will get into that. But first, I want to just go over, you know, what we have to certainly look forward to in 2024. Like I said, Nicki Minaj is closing out the year. I'm very excited about Pink Friday 2. And I'm just so glad the album is coming this year, that she's not pushing it even a couple weeks into January, because it's just like 2023 really needs this. But we do have some, though not many, albums already slated with release dates. Very few with release dates, though. The biggest right now is Jennifer Lopez, and I will admit I am very impressed that finally J.Lo has given us the release date for This Is Me Now, which is her first album in 9 years, which is absolutely crazy to think about. Her last album came out in 2014. And if you don't count the movie soundtrack stuff she's done in more recent years. Although, part of the reason why this took so long is because she decided to turn this album into a movie. This album was announced over a year ago now, in November of 2022, on the anniversary, the 20-year anniversary of This Is Me Then, which was her third studio album. And this is the follow-up to that. It's actually kind of interesting because I feel like, why did she name that album This Is Me Then if she didn't think in the future she was going to make an album called This Is Me Now? Because I feel like This Is Me Now is a much more organic, jumps to the forefront of the mind kind of idea. This Is Me Then is not as, doesn't always organically come to the mind as a good album title. Does that make any sense? unless you're planning on doing a part 1 and a part 2. And so that, you know, when she announced this a year ago, we were thinking, okay, it's going to come in 2023. Well, actually, no, it's going to come in 2024. It's going to come on February 16th. But I believe the main reason for this delay is she decided, you know what, I want to film not just a few music videos. I want to make this a visual album. I want to make this a video. I want to make this a movie. I've been doing a lot of work with Amazon Prime. So why don't I partner with them and turn this into a spectacle that will not release in theaters, but it will be released on Amazon Prime as like a movie musical. So I do believe there's actually going to be like dialogue. This isn't just a stream of music videos. Although to the level this is scripted, I'm not entirely sure. There's still not a lot of, you know, info. We do have the first single, Can't Get Enough, which will come out in the beginning of January. So I'm very happy that Jennifer Lopez finally came out, because I was wondering, as we move through 2023, where the heck this album was. I think well, let's be honest, I don't think a lot of people are checking for Jennifer Lopez in 2023. That's the sad truth. She's kind of not really relevant anymore, and, you know, she's not revered in the same way that someone like Beyonce of her generation is, or even Shakira, for, you know, people coming for, you know, her singing ability and such. I don't really want to get into that, but anyway, I'm not the hugest Jennifer Lopez fan, but I must admit, I was wondering, it was just like, come on. I thought this album was going to come in the summer, and then I thought definitely in the fall. I believe that a big reason why the album didn't come a little sooner is because of the SAG strike. The SAG strike was likely pushing things back. I believe she also switched her record label. So things are finally moving, but, you know, the truth is that a lot of musicians are a part of the Screen Actors Guild. And if you're working with a studio like Amazon Studios, you know, you have to work around that. Though SAG was giving out waivers left and right, which is a big reason why Taylor Swift, who is a SAG member, was able to not only put out, but promote her Eras Tour film. I believe Beyonce was also given that. Even though Beyonce's film came out after the SAG strike ended, she was still able to announce it during the SAG strikes. But Jennifer Lopez, I don't know, she maybe just didn't bother to try and ask for a waiver, or she just figured, let's just push it into 2024. But that being said, that is definitely happening. We also have the week before an Usher album. He's also not put out an album in a long time, and that's noteworthy because he's also going to be the Super Bowl halftime show performer, which I'm not going to lie, I think like many of us were kind of like, okay. But I feel like that's not really fair. He, you know, he is a great amongst R&B legends of the 90s and 2000s. I'm not a huge fan, but I respect him. And, you know, I still think it's great that the halftime shows have been largely people of color for the last few years. That's not to say that I do feel that selfishly, I would have been rooting for perhaps Miley Cyrus, or I don't know. There's a bunch of women who I'd like to see host, but we did have Rihanna last year, and they like to go man, woman, man, woman. They try to kind of like to keep that up. They don't always. So anyway, it's not a big deal, but I don't think people are that excited about Usher performing at the halftime show. And then the only other artist that I could look at and see was giving us an album is Sheryl Crow. She has an album coming out in the spring, which apparently, you know, wasn't originally going to happen because I seem to remember in 2019 when she was putting out an album, there was a lot of talk about it being her final record. But, you know, if you follow a lot of artists, they tend to say that, especially a lot of artists I follow. There's not much else, though. 2024 is looking still pretty empty, but there's a lot of heavily speculated, to varying degrees, albums that should be coming in the future. I mean, the only other one I can note that, you know, I listen to is Sleater-Kinney putting out an album in January. So let's go through all of the heavily predicted artists that I somewhat care about. I mean, keep in mind, you may be like, Arthur, you don't really talk about a lot of these artists on this channel. Well, this video is a little different. You know, I will review some of this stuff, but I won't review all of it. So first, I want to talk about Dua Lipa. Dua Lipa put out a song in November called Houdini. She just put out an extended version of the song. I think it's really interesting because Dua is talking about in a recent interview that she is really wanting to, you know, smash the disco ball, She's done with that sort of style, whereas I feel that Houdini is not too dissimilar to Future Nostalgia in terms of, you know, the song structure and the production. And so I don't know. I was hoping for something a little bit more experimental. So far, Houdini has just not really stuck for me. It's kind of gone in one ear and out the other. But, and I don't know if it's going to be as big of a hit, because so far I don't really think, I mean, Dance the Night from the Barbie movie was sort of Dua's most recent big success, but that song was 100% Future Nostalgia. I mean, that was very much the style that she was big in 2024. But Houdini is like a slight departure, but not enough. And I don't think that, you know, I think Dance the Night is still eclipsing it. But, you know, Dua has stated, and it is heavily speculated, that she will put out her third studio album in the first half of 2024. And I would be super, super surprised if she didn't. She is one of these artists that I'm almost certain is going to put out new music next year. There's only a few, though, that I can say for sure other than Dua. And so that's kind of unfortunate. The next artist I do have to talk about is Taylor Swift, because she is one of the consistent artists, unfortunately, right now, who, whereas everyone else seems to be asleep at the wheel, she is very much like putting out stuff at a, you know, faster than ever. Most artists slow down once they get to their mid-30s. Taylor is just speeding up. Perhaps it needs to slow down again. But we do have kind of this precedent that's been set of these re-recordings, and it does seem, and it would make sense for Taylor to finish them sooner rather than later, especially since she is on this 2-year tour celebrating all of her eras. A lot of Taylor Swift fans are speculating that her 11th studio album could potentially come in as the next project before the re-recordings are finished. But I would say that it doesn't really make sense for her to put out a new body of work while she is still on this era's tour. How on earth would she fit all of those songs into the tour? And of course, a lot of fans would be super upset if she, you know, for example, decided to take out Lover and put in a new section of the new album. You know, it's sort of like she can't do that. That's not what was advertised. And the tour is already crazy long. So Taylor can't really do that. So I don't think she's putting out a new album next year, to be completely honest with you. If she does, it will be in the September-October timeframe, like when Midnights came out. So still a little far off. I think that Reputation, Taylor's version, is the next thing on the horizon, and I do believe it is going to be coming in January or February. I was very surprised, and I think all of us were, that she did not announce it on the Sao Paulo final show in Brazil a few weeks ago. That was very odd. There were a lot of telltale signs that there was going to be a big announcement about it, and even some major social media accounts from companies like Auntie Anne's Pretzels or the Empire State Building in New York would tweet photos, black and white, with Reputation song lyrics and promotional kind of teasers, which made us all think they know something. Apparently they didn't. Or maybe this is a longer game kind of promotion, because Taylor is, you know, now she's on a hiatus from the tour. It resumes in February. And maybe in this interim, you know, there's going to be more promotion for it. And a lot of people are speculating that maybe either on her birthday or on New Year's Day, it will be either released or announced. I do not think Reputation is going to be released before New Year's Day, though. I don't think that's likely. If it's going to come, it's going to be in 2024. And then we still have her debut. I think it would just make sense to wrap this whole thing up, not leave debut stranded for a few years. And since debut is a summer album, put it out right at the end, in June or so, July, right at the end of the Eras tour in Europe, because it ends, I believe, sometime around then, June or July. That would be the perfect way to bookend this era, and then if she wanted, she could do TS11 in the fall. Though, goodness gracious, girl, maybe take a break, because, you know, this is a lot. But we'll see. You know, Taylor is just unstoppable right now. She is also, you know, apparently still developing a movie for Fox Searchlight. So there's all of this stuff going on. It's a little bit much. It's a little crazy. But, you know, time will tell, but I would be super surprised if she didn't finish the re-recordings in 2024. I think it just makes so much sense to get it all done with. The sooner the better, because, you know, the longer that, you know, those old masters are on their, you know, accumulating revenue, it just defeats the purpose, right? But I also think that Taylor's also getting tired of this and she kind of wants it to be done. Hence why 1989 did not get a lick of promo, which I think surprised a lot of fans. So yes, we will see more Taylor in 2024, but that should come as no surprise. Another artist who I feel pretty confident about putting out new music, though this is largely just because she has been consistent as well year after year, is Lana Del Rey. However, I'm wondering if perhaps in 2024 she will focus instead on a covers album, something she's been talking about for a little bit, and I think it would be the perfect juncture in her career to do. You know, she talked about in a recent interview how heavy and how difficult it was for her to mine such personal grief for Ocean Boulevard. And I think now she wants to do something a little more universal that's not so deeply, you know, digging into the trenches of her own personal story. And I think a covers album would be the perfect fit for that. But, you know, she also says she is working on an album that is original material, but it's more American Standard-esque. So it's, you know, writing songs that are more relatable to everyone, not just herself. You know, Lana, I do still think could slow down a bit, but I'm also not going to complain if we're getting fed. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a new Lana project in 2024. I do want to talk about Yona Lee, because she has also sort of basically confirmed that we are going to get at least, I believe, 3 new songs. The Swedish artist Yona Lee, who formerly or also goes by I Am I, Who Am I? Because she is using crowdfunding once again to create a new project. And so far, the funds have been raised to, I believe, create at least 3 songs and 3 music videos. I believe that the next threshold may have not yet been reached, but it could still be, and this could turn into a full-length album. But for her, I didn't think Yona Lee was going to get back into the studio so soon after having her child. But, you know, she does get back right into the saddle, as her career is evidenced. She puts things out at a remarkably fast pace for an independent artist with relatively high production value, I would argue. Aurora has just put out a new song called Your Blood, and thanks to people in the comments enlightening me, it sounds like an album is pretty much confirmed for next year. I even heard someone say it was looking at March. She was looking at March, which is a lot sooner than I had anticipated. If you watch my review of that new song, I do love the new song. Grow on Me even more. I'm so excited. She would be an artist that one of the artists I'm the most excited for in 2024. And so I do think that, why not? By the way, I was a little cold down here, so that's why I got this blanket. I just realized I didn't take this off. All right, so, Billie Eilish. I do think Billie Eilish is coming out with a new album. She's talked about it. She's appearing on SNL in 2 weeks, and I think a new song will come out with that. So I think the album campaign will begin in the new year. I would be very shocked if Billie Eilish did not deliver her 3rd studio album. It's about time. You know, it's been a little while since Happier Than Ever. And then I really do want to talk about Shakira, because I would say Shakira is, I think, a certainty. But at the same time, recent events in the last few months has made me less sure about what's going on with Shakira's 10th studio album. Her last came out in 2017, so it's been 6 years, almost 7, and she has been putting out a bevy of singles over the last 2 years. And I even saw mock-ups and what looked like very, revealing scoop insider information about the album, title and track list. It was like, okay, this is happening. And I really thought it was going to be announced at the VMAs, because Shakira was honored with the Video Vanguard Award, and I just felt like that was the perfect moment for her. She was a little bit back in the spotlight. But instead, she didn't announce anything, and then she put out a new song, another collab. She's been collabing with a lot of Colombian but also Latin artists and of course almost entirely in Spanish, which, you know, good for her. I think, you know, she's better off in the Spanish lane. That's her natural fit for her. This album will be a Spanish language album, but I have no idea. You know, the only other thing she's recently said about it, and it was around the VMAs, is, and it's not a very, a little bit of a disheartening anecdote, is that she compared work on this album to the construction of the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, which, for those familiar, Sagrada Familia has been being worked on for like 150 years. So, I don't know. It makes it seem like she's not ready yet, that it's still very much under construction. But I would hope that it's wrapping up. And I would hope that the plan is to put it out in 2024, because it's about dang time. And, you know, she has been giving us so many songs. My favorite so far out of all of them is Copa Vacía. But, you know, I'm ready for the next Shakira album. I mean, come on. So I really do hope that, you know, we get J-Lo and Shakira in 2024. Probably not in the exact same time period. But, the other Latin-esque artist I want to highlight here is Nelly Furtado. I'm even more a little bit disheartened to see Nelly Furtado kind of drop off again, after it seemed like there was a lot of movement in the direction of an album and new music. First, we had all of the appearances last summer and the beginnings of press interviews and the rumblings of her being in the studio. Then we had her song, her first song in 6 years, called Eat Your Man, featuring Australian producer and DJ Dom Dolla, which, you know, is a sort of self-referential song in the lyrics. You know, she references promiscuous, I'm like a bird, say it right. And it's very much an EDM track. It's a club track. And it's very, you know, in one ear and out the other in that regard. It's just a teaser. I didn't exactly get album vibes. This was giving me Spotify single. And so I don't know if that's necessarily the first single of Nelly Furtado's long-awaited, I guess it would be her 7th studio album. But, you know, similar to Shakira, it's been since 2017. I don't know. She did then put out a new song with Timbaland and Justin Timberlake called Keep Going Up. And I must admit, it's kind of sad how little noise that this collab made. I mean, at one point, Justin, Nelly, and Timbaland were dominating the airwaves in 2006 and 2007. And obviously, it made perfect sense for Nelly to call Timbaland up again. I don't know who called who, and then to recruit Justin to do this for the millennials. You know, but it didn't work this time. But there's some added baggage that came not long after this song's release. And I gotta be honest with you, the song just does not, it's not bringing the same heat that her, you know, the previous collabs did. It definitely feels very much like we're trying to chase a hit here, but we're just not able to. We're past our prime. I feel like Nelly, I want her to go back to making slightly more, you know, Latin club ready music, like in the Loose era. You know, her last album was a lot more indie alternative and experimental. I love that for her. But, you know, this new aesthetic, she's going back into the sort of club vibe, the Miami club vibe. And that's where this is, you know, this very like, Latina club queen kind of aesthetic. And I would love to see that kind of fully fleshed out in this new album to sort of be a Loose 2.0, which is what she's been teasing. It's gone radio silent ever since the VMAs. And it was a big deal that she was at the VMAs. You know, it was really cool to see Nelly Furtado standing up there with Taylor Swift to give her an award. And to see Nelly part of the consciousness, because she just went off the face of the earth. Even before her last studio album. I mean, she went through a major hiatus then. And, you know, she just really had been kind of off the public consciousness for like a decade. And there's been a real push. And to be honest, Drake is part of that. He apparently was one of the people who kind of pushed her to put herself in the public again and say, you know, girl, you can't retire yet. You're only in your 40s. Like, it's not time to retire. This could be your second coming. But unfortunately, it's been dust since, and there's been no press or anything. So who knows what's going on with Nelly? Is she reworking this album? She said she was going to put out a new solo single by the end of the summer. This was in the early part of the summer, and that never happened. But we did get this Timbaland collab. But could Britney Spears' book have sort of inadvertently derailed Nelly Furtado's music plans? Unfortunately, there's some real validity to this theory. And of course, I'm the one positing it. I haven't seen it said anywhere on the internet, but I was the one thinking about it. I've been thinking about it. Maybe others have too. First, involving Justin Timberlake. I don't think that attaching yourself as a comeback to Justin Timberlake is probably the move now that Britney's book has come out. And you know, I'm not going to go into it, but you probably all know if you follow pop culture what I'm talking about. In fact, Justin was supposedly planning a big comeback, either for solo music or for NSYNC. And apparently those plans have either been postponed or shelved due to how damning this book was. To be honest with you, I really don't think the book really was that hard on Justin, but apparently he's been going through it. And this was the edited version. You know, you already threatened and said you can't put out, you know, the full version. So what did she take out? But then Timbaland put his foot in his mouth, almost even worse, because Justin has sort of been keeping quiet, which is probably the best thing he can do at this point. Because to try and, you know, point it back at Britney is probably, that's the worst look. And he at least is media savvy enough to know that right now. But Timbaland, in a recent appearance, you know, in reference to Britney, said that Justin should have put a muzzle on her. And that invoked, you know, I mean, I believe Missy Elliott, you know, had to get involved, and she was like, Timbaland, you got to call and apologize to Britney. Like, this is career-ending worthy statements. You can't, regardless of your own personal thoughts on the Justin Britney drama, you can't publicly say stuff like that, especially, you know, about a woman and Britney and her experience. It's just, oh my God. I mean, if you were trying to get relevant again, you just torpedoed your career. So I think Timbaland, you know, honestly, I mean, his career has been over for a decade, but I think he like completely sabotaged any chance of him having a major resurgence with those comments. And so now Nelly Furtado's like, great, both people that I was, you know, probably cooking a lot of my new album with in the studio are now personas non grata. And I got to go back to the drawing board and rethink my 7th studio album. I got to scrap anything with Justin, scrap anything with Timbaland. So that may be a big reason why post VMAs, she's gone quiet. I'm just going to be real. I mean, I would, you know, Nelly seems like someone who would want to support women. And she's never publicly talked about Britney Spears, but I highly doubt that she supports at all, you know, what Justin or Timbaland is saying. And at any point, she doesn't want to be a part of the drama. I'd like to be excluded from the narrative, right? It's just unnecessary baggage that Nelly does not want for her comeback. And I don't want to see Justin and Timbaland drag her down. Oh, that's my thoughts. Also, the fact that even before the book came out, that single, that collab, absolutely bombed. I mean, it made no noise. It's actually kind of embarrassing because it was like, this is supposed to be a big thing, and it wasn't. But we're seeing that a lot with, you know, some of these legacy acts coming out. The Rolling Stones album made a lot less noise than I think they might have anticipated. And, you know, the Beatles put out a final song and no one cared. I'm being a little bit, you know, I think certain demographics cared more, older demographics. But I think the pop culture is just, you know, moved so fast that these things that, you know, you think are going to be a big deal because of legacy acts, they not necessarily, you know, in this day and age, you're likely going to flop. I think Katy Perry is really running into that. When we talk about Katy Perry, I think Katy Perry is in a really precarious position in terms of chart success, but I also think, luckily, first of all, she's made her bag, so it don't matter. And also, she doesn't really care anymore about that. So it's the fans that are going to get upset. I do believe, and it seems likely, that Katy Perry will release new music, presumably a new album, in 2024. She teased it at part of her residency in one of her later performances. And I really hope that, it's an improvement over Smile, because, that's, again, a very forgettable album. And Katy, the world needs Katy Perry pop in it, okay? I mean, call me a little biased, but I do hope that Katy Perry can return. But, it's a matter of when. I'm not sure. Then, speaking of pop culture legacy, Lady Gaga. This video could get very long, so I'm going to try not to harp on these things for too long. But Lady Gaga is a bit of a complicated topic. Supposedly, she's back in the studio, and supposedly she is working with some very, very pop-leaning producers, Circuit being one of them. And there's even rumors that she is potentially reconnecting with Red One. Again, take a lot of this with a pinch of salt, because a lot of this is speculative Twitter stuff. But Lady Gaga has, teased being in the studio. It would make sense. It's been almost 4 years since Chromatica. I would really love to see it. Who wouldn't? However, I'm still a little skeptical. First of all, Lady Gaga is putting out a movie next year. Well, it's not her movie, but she's being very heavily attached to it as one of the co-leads. Joker Folie à Deux, which is basically Joker 2, and directed by Todd Phillips, with Joaquin Phoenix and as Joker, and her as Harley Quinn. It comes out next October. It's going to be a musical, so it's going to be like A Star Is Born. There's going to be a whole soundtrack with new Lady Gaga songs. And I just don't know if Lady Gaga would want to put out an album the same year that it's not just that she's starring in a movie, but she's putting out a musical kind of package with the movie. And so I'm skeptical of the fact that Lady Gaga would want to, especially with how she sort of operates these days, it's a bit of slower time scale. Whereas, Taylor Swift's ramping up, Lady Gaga is slowing down, and a bunch of other artists like Katy Perry and such. And so I'm very skeptical that Lady Gaga would think, we should be like, well, no, I'm doing Joker 2 next year. I can't put out an album. An album has to be on its own year with nothing else like that big. And like I said, it's going to have an awards campaign, and she doesn't want to potentially conflict with that. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, yeah, she might be in the studio, but that album may not come out until 2025. Just being real. So we'll see. I'm very hopeful still that Lady Gaga would put out a new project. I do think if she did, it would actually be first half of 2024, because, once you get into the summer, it's just getting way too close to Joker 2. But then again, maybe she'll surprise us and she'll put them out relatively close to each other. But I definitely don't think she'd put out a new album right after Joker 2 in the fall. She would definitely want to focus on promoting that. But like I said, I just think she kind of, I don't know, she's not going to want to double book next year. And so, not to mention, we are still waiting on a documentary that was supposed to come out in the fall about Tony Bennett and her relationship. I don't know what happened, but that documentary never came to be. It makes you wonder if it's not actually finished yet. Also, Lady Gaga fans are irked by the fact that the Chromatica Ball film has still not been released. At this point, I don't think that's ever coming, and I think that Lady Gaga fans have all accepted this. I mean, if Beyonce and Taylor Swift can put out movies when they're the same year that their tours have been, begun and not ended, but, I mean, in the case of Beyonce's, it ended. The Renaissance tour is over. Taylor's is still going. But Lady Gaga, this tour was in the summer of 2022. I mean, this is like approaching a year and a half, and so people are, like, this isn't happening anymore. It's a shame, but I wouldn't expect that anymore. Even though she did say she was working on it back in July, but that was 6 months ago. So we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but I have a feeling that Lady Gaga is going through a bit of an identity crisis. I think that she is maybe wrong, or maybe she has and she's come out of it because now she is in the studio again, potentially. I think that she's been going through some, I think she's fallen out of love with pop culture and being a singer. Not a singer, but a pop star. You know, a dance artist. I think she wants to become more of like, you know, a classical singer, and, you know, put out jazz and, you know, sort of more movie soundtrack-esque stuff. And, you know, do collabs with the Rolling Stones like we saw on their new album. But time will tell. Let's see. Ariana Grande is in a bit of a similar boat to Lady Gaga. She also has a big movie coming out in 2024, which actually has a part 2 coming out in 2025. Wicked Part 1 is supposed to come out around Thanksgiving of next year. I'm actually way more excited for Wicked than I am for Joker 2, by the way. I forgot to mention this. As of right now, I have no desire to see Joker 2. I never saw 2019 Joker. And based on what I've heard of it, you know, I respect it as, you know, potentially a very, you know, well-made piece of cinematography. But I do not support, I'm going to be blunt here, I do not support, you know, sort of humanizing what I view as incel, antagonistic, violent men. Because, you know, first of all, I'm not a comic book person. I don't really watch comic book movies. I've dipped my toes into Marvel, but I have not at all really dipped into DC, and I have no real desire to. Joker is a DC property. Those movies tend to be a lot more gritty and dark and machismo. And I was a bit disappointed in Lady Gaga signing up to work on this movie because I felt like, I don't know. I feel like the Joker is not a character that deserves any sympathy, and watching a movie that you consider entertainment where you watch a guy become a psychopath is not an idea of entertainment for me, especially when there's so much realism imbued into the movie. You know, especially with Todd Phillips and his style. This is one of his more realistic, you know, planet Earth, modern day kind of superhero kind of movies. This isn't Guardians of the Galaxy. So I have a real problem with, you know, what kind of culture that's feeding for young men. And I think it conflates with feminism. So I don't really support Lady Gaga taking this role. I don't also enjoy the genre. So I will probably be sitting out. You know, I may be wrong. This movie may end up being just too good for me to miss out on. And if it's not gratuitously violent for the bulk of the movie, that I could sit through it, because regardless of my thoughts on the film or not, I can't stomach gratuitous violence. I don't like slasher films. Violence has to be tastefully done, and it has to be less than 30% of the movie for me to really want to enjoy it or even see it. So if the movie is not, you know, absolutely gratuitous and handles this kind of subject matter with care that I respect, and it's really good critically, then I will see it. But I'll probably listen to the music. But I have not very much desire to see that movie. I'm going to be real with you. Just doesn't mean just because, you know, I'm a Lady Gaga fan, I'm going to want to see this movie. I think it's kind of, again, you know, I don't know. But I'm very excited for Wicked, okay? You know, that's more my wheelhouse. That's more the kind of stuff I'm interested in seeing, and I hope it's good. But Ariana's been busy working on that, but fans are clamoring for new music, and apparently she has been, like Lady Gaga, recently in the studio. Now, unlike Lady Gaga, I could see Ariana Grande not having absolutely any problem with fronting 2024 with a new record, and then, you know, a few months later getting into the Wicked campaign, because I don't see Ariana being so, I don't know, she's put out, what, 3-4 month gap between Sweetener and Thank You Next. There was a 5-month gap. If she can pull that off, she can, you know, Lady Gaga would never do that today. So, you know, I mean, it's just different work styles. So yeah, maybe, I mean, there's still a lot of doubt. I think a lot of Ariana fans are still like, kind of like, yeah, I don't know if this is really going to happen, but we'll definitely get new Ariana music with the Wicked soundtrack. So at the very least, there is that. Selena Gomez has talked about when she put out Single Soon, a song that did kind of come and go, didn't really become a huge hit. And it's a so-so song. And to be honest with you, it's very forgettable to me. It's not one of her best. She did talk a lot about how she is working on an album, how it is a very upbeat and kind of happy album. There's not so much, you know, going through the muck of the emotions on it as she describes it. And that excites me because it's making me think it's going to be a little bit more, you know, back to that Stars Dance revival kind of pop. But again, we've not heard any more updates, so we'll see. But I think Selena Gomez is a pretty, you know, pretty locked in certainty, I would say, for 2024. And, you know, besides Only Murders in the Building, which I know she has been continuing to work on over time, it's not like she has a big movie in 2024 that will potentially cause problems with scheduling. You know, season 4 of Only Murders was renewed, but I don't know if that season's going to come in 2024. It might not be until 2025. Okay, let's talk about, okay, who else? Grimes. Oh boy, Grimes is really frustrating. No, Grimes has talked about how there's apparently an entire album that her record label currently has that they're basically going, girl, when do you want to put this out? We're assuming this is book 1, the album she's been teasing for 2 years, that she put out some singles for in 2022. So I don't really understand. Grimes on Twitter, she did try to sort of explain it, but it basically was just like, I want to put out an album of Grimes music that's from a human, and then I want to put out an album that's an AI version of myself. And I want to put these two out around the same time. And so I'm waiting for these two things to come together. Plus, you know, she is raising 2 children, and she is dealing with some messiness with custody battles with Elon Musk. So I think that has been preoccupying her. So yeah, Grimes, I really hope in 2024, whatever this new project is, if it is book 1, or if it's an entirely new project, and if it is this dual album where you have this, I think it's, you know, I roll my eyes a little bit when Grimes talks about AI. I think she's a little too enamored with it, and I think she's a little too quick to sell humans under the river for AI. Because don't get me wrong, I find AI fascinating, but the way Grimes talks about it, I mean, she's just all in. And I'm like, girl, we need to, you know, let's not sell humans under the river yet, okay? But, you know, she's interested in doing collaborative AI projects where fans basically use her voice and make music with her voice, and she wants to pay them and then find a way that she can also get royalties. I mean, she's doing really interesting stuff. It's sort of like Imogen Heap, where I feel like they're getting so caught up in the technology that they're forgetting about music. Speaking of Imogen Heap, she is an artist who I'm really hoping, this is a little bit, we're getting now into, before I talk about Imogen, let me just go through a few more artists that I think are likely for 2024. Before I get to the artists that I'm hopeful for, but let's be real, I wouldn't bet anything like on my life or anything that they put out new music, because they probably won't, but maybe they will. A few other artists, though, that I think will put out new music in 2024. I do think that Cardi B will probably, if she's going to stink in music, will probably put out her second studio album. I think it's crazy that Cardi B has not put out a second studio album in almost 6 years. Never would have thought that when 2018, when she blew up. I thought she was going to, you know, she was just going to keep going. Sort of like, you know, the beginning of Missy Elliott's career or Lil Kim's or Nicki Minaj's, you know, they were very, very active. But no, Cardi B seems to be potentially going to the Lil Mama and Lauryn Hill school of one album wonders, even though I would not consider Invasion of Privacy to be on the level of either of those albums. You know, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill or Voice of the Young People. Much better female MC albums than Invasion of Privacy. But, you know, it is interesting. They both dropped one album and never dropped another album. So maybe Cardi still has, that's the fate of her. There's, you know, she seems to kind of go, you know, I will retire. No, I'm not retiring. It was a joke. I'm trolling. So we'll see. I'm not that interested, but, you know, I didn't even listen to Bongos because I was just like, I'm not engaged at all with Cardi B and her music. Shawn Mendes, I would be surprised if he didn't go all of 2024 without putting out a new album. It just seems like it's about time. It's been since 2020. He's too young to be going on these long hiatuses. I just would be really surprised. But who knows? Maybe he won't. I think Lorde is going to put out a new album. It'll be her fourth, and there has been some confirmation of that, I believe. Let's see. Kim Petras has been talking about putting out new music in 2024. She just put out 2 albums. 2, not just 1. The second one was a surprise. You know, Feed the Beast and Problematique. But she did say 2024 she wants to put out more stuff. So, you know, who knows? If she put out two albums in 2023, who's to say she's not going to put out at least 1 EP or album in 2024? I think Coldplay is going to probably come back. I believe I remember hearing that Coldplay was originally planning on putting out like 3 albums. This was back in 2022. They wanted to put out 3 albums before 2025, and then they would retire. Well, interestingly, we're now approaching 2024, and they haven't put out an album in, you know, over 2 years. So I don't think that that plan is actually on the table. But I do think they will put out at least 1 more album before 2025. So, and you know, they've talked about retiring before. So I always, when Chris Martin says that, it's like, girl, you're never going to fully retire. But I do think, you know, Coldplay will probably put out a new record next year. Just, they've been, you know, following the pattern, right? Curly, you know, she's talking about and hinting about big things coming, a new project. So I do suspect that we will get at least a new song, if not perhaps even her 3rd studio album in 2024. I'm not going to, you know, pin my life on that. I think we will get new music next year. Maybe not the album, but we'll see. I think Zayn is going to come back with a new album from One Direction. And I think, who else do I have on here? Oh, Jackie Evancho. I really, you know, she's been putting out some original songs recently, and she's talked about how she wants a new album. She's been working on new music. So I highly recommend these artists, by the way, if you're not familiar with them. I love Jackie Evancho. She's very slept on. She's from America's Got Talent. She's put out a lot of cover albums. She's a very classically trained singer, but she's also wanting to become a singer-songwriter herself. And, you know, she's still very young. She's got plenty of opportunity ahead of her. So who are some artists that I'm not so certain are going to put out albums, but I hope do? Imogen Heap. Actually, Imogen is likely going to put out a new song anytime soon. Anytime now. And she's been teasing the music video on her Instagram that she's already filmed. And so I hope that this is ushering in a new album, because she has not put out an album since 2014. And though she's put out some songs here and there, it'd be nice for her to, you know, put out a new body of work. Again, similar to Grimes, I feel like they get these, some of these artists get a little distracted with wanting to do these avant-garde technological things, which are cool and are important, but they lose sight of being singer-songwriters, and that music sort of falls by the wayside in light of creating some cool app or some neat breakthrough technology collaboration. And Imogen has definitely been wanting to do that in the last decade, and I hope that I just want a classic Imogen record again. I really do. It's at the top of my wish list for 2024. Well, along with one other artist. I'll probably end with her because I think she'll come out at the end of the year if she does it all. But there are some other artists that I'd love to see, but I'm not 100% sold on. I do think, you know, Sarah Bareilles, it's coming about time again for her to put out a new body of work. It's been since 2019, and would really love to see her return. I'd love to see Marina, formerly Marina and the Diamonds. Again, it's been since 2021. There are rumors about Adele, but, you know, again, I take all of that with a pinch of salt. She's sort of shown that she's willing to take very long hiatuses now. So the jump between 30 and whatever the next album is, maybe shorter than 25 to 30, but will it only be 2 or 3 years? I don't know. We shall see. Lil Nas X, where has he been? Well, apparently he wants to make Christian gospel music. No, that's, I think, him trolling a bit on Twitter. But I do like to see him active again. It's been a little bit now since his 2021 debut. And again, similar to Cardi B, I was like, this guy is on a roll. I'm certain that the next album won't be terribly far away. But it turns out, you know, he's kind of been laying low. But I do think 2024, he could make a big return. Norwegian electronic artist Amethystium is someone, if you're a real OG on this channel or you really watch all my videos, you might have heard of. Well, I love him. I've reviewed some of his OG albums on this channel. He has been teasing an album for like almost a decade now. Every year I would add that I would hope that he finally comes out with his, I believe it would be his 6th studio album. His last was in 2014. He did put out a new song in 2022, which makes me really hopeful. At the time, he said an album wasn't imminent, but he was working on it. So maybe a year later, he's finally getting ready, but we shall see. Sarah McLachlan, what happened to you? It'd be really nice to see Sarah McLachlan come back. You know, I'm glad that Alanis Morissette didn't fully retire. And, you know, it's great to see Fiona Apple come back after such a long hiatus. I don't expect those artists to come back anytime soon. But Sarah McLachlan has not put out an album in a decade once we get to 2024. So it would be really nice to get new Sarah music. But she's been on my wish list for several years now, and she's been quiet as hell. There has not been any movement on that front, so who knows? Another artist that is not well known, but if you follow my channel very closely, you might have heard of, is the Green Children, or formerly known as the Green Children. Milla Sund, who is the vocalist, has announced that she is making a solo project under the name Milla Faye, and I'm really hopeful that in 2024 we get at least the first taste of her solo music, if not a new project. So that I'm very hopeful for. And last but certainly not least, I have to talk about my queen, Enya. I say this with a lot of trepidation because I genuinely feel like every year I mention Enya as like a prospective artist to put out new music the year to come, it jinxes it and she doesn't, because I genuinely did not see it coming in 2015 when she announced. I was really excited for, you know, the years prior to that, and then I kind of 2015 just wasn't checking for it, and then it was like, boom. So I'm a little worried that if I'm getting my hopes up too much for a certain year, it's going to jinx it. But it'll be 9 years in 2024 since Dark Sky Island. She's never gone that long, even though she is the queen of long hiatuses. I really am hopeful. There has been, you know, a lot of rumbling from her longtime collaborators, even her sister in recent years, confirming that she is working on new music. I do believe that she currently is working on new music. It is just a matter of when that's going to come out. I had hoped that it might be this year, but at the same time, I kind of figured it wouldn't. And I am very confident that if it doesn't come out in 2024, it will come out in 2025. But, you know, Enya is one of my all-time faves, and it's a real treat when she releases new music. I hope that whatever she does release is worth the wait, and up to snuff, because, you know, her OG music is her best. But yeah, I'm trying not to put too much expectant energy on it. But at this point, you know, gotta say it, like, it's due. It's due. But if she does put out an album, I predict the end of the year. She always does November, so that's when I would expect. I don't expect her to deviate from that at this point. So those are, you know, yeah, that's kind of the gist. And there's some few other artists, you know, of course, you know, you never know who's going to blow up and debut. SZA has talked about putting out a deluxe edition of SOS, which may turn into its own album. So I think that there's a good chance that SZA is going to put out new music in 2024. I think that a few others that might come to mind that I wouldn't be surprised by would be Casey Musgraves, as well as potentially more Miley Cyrus. Though I don't think Miley Cyrus is doing an Endless Summer Vacation continuation. I think that that Used to Be Young campaign potentially was tied to more music that was going to come in the fall, and for whatever reason, that was scrapped. And so now I think that she is moving on and that era is over, and perhaps a new era is imminent, or there's going to be a long gap. Speaking of Beyonce, I do think Act 2 could come in 2024. She recently put out a new song for the release of the film called My House, which I think is tying together with Act 1. I don't think it's a single for whatever Act 2 might be. But there also are a lot of different theories floating around about what these acts might actually mean. And does it necessarily mean that Act 2 is going to be an album, or is Act 2 going to be a different form of presenting Act 1? For example, is Act 2 going to actually be the movie? And then maybe the music videos for Renaissance? There's a lot of different theories. And obviously, is Act 2 going to be a completely different genre? I think that would be, wise, because, we want to make it a different thing. But I mean, 2024 would be an apt time to put it out. But we'll see. And as far as Rihanna is concerned, let me say this. I think Britney Spears and Rihanna have both, on paper, basically retired from music without saying it. I actually think that there's a stronger chance that we would get new Britney Spears music in the not so terribly distant future than it would be we'd get new music from Rihanna. I think that Normani may actually be in a similar boat, which is really sad because Normani's career sabotaged right before it could even really fully start. And there probably are a lot of factors behind that are out of her control or her choice, and it is what it is. But I don't think Rihanna really is planning on an album anymore anytime soon. I think that, maybe at one point she was, but she's changed plans and she just wanted to do the Black Panther songs. But who knows? And maybe she will. Maybe she'll finally come back. But I've lost, I'm not counting. I'm not looking for it anymore. I think a lot of us have lost interest. I mean, the Super Bowl would have been the perfect time to do it. And now that that's come and gone, I really don't think Rihanna's interested anymore. Britney, on the other hand, has talked about wanting to make music again. I think 2024 is a little soon to expect new music from her. And I'm not talking about that dusty, will.i.am demo that she put out in the summer. It was really bad. I mean, if she's going to put out music like that, she might as well not put out any more music. Like, why not end on a higher note? But yeah, as far as Britney is concerned and Rihanna, I wouldn't hold my breath. But we'll see. Also, Camila Cabello. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw new music from her next year. I'd also, of course, would love a new Enigma album. But, he is becoming very sporadic. It's been a long time as well for him, but I wouldn't bet on it. Even more so than Enya, I wouldn't bet on Enigma next year. But we'll see. So there's some big names that I'm, in my sphere of, music that I'm interested in. I mean, of course, we'd all love to see Kate Bush return, but at this point, I think, I don't think it's ever going to happen. It's a shame because she's not too old to put out new music. It is a little bit sad. Some of these artists just throw in the towel prematurely when I still think they have more to give. But I definitely think Enya, and I hope Enigma. I definitely hope. And Sarah McLachlan. I really hope that these artists are not done. They're too young to be done. I mean, if Dolly Parton, and Cher keep going, why can't they? I know it's different strokes for different folks, but so those are my predictions for 2024. Are there others that I missed that you're excited for, or are there some announced projects that you know of that I didn't cover here? I think Kali Uchis has an album coming out. I need to check out her music. I think she has an album coming out in January as well. Yeah, I really, as I said, there'll probably be a lot of artists that I will discover for the first time, breakthrough or older artists that I didn't know of before. Always happens every year. But I'll be interested to see how many I got correct. And I really do hope that Nelly Furtado can come through in 2024. Really need a new Nelly Furtado album. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful, blessed day, and I will see you all in my next video. Peace, love, and light. Bye.